ضيوفنا الكرام نتوقف الآن مع جلسة بعنوان تجنب المخاطر الاستراتيجية في سلسلة التوريد والشراكات بين القطاعين العام والخاص. يقدم هذه الكلمة الأستاذ باول ماكدونالد، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة ماكدونالد للاستشارات.
You good? Thank you. Thank you. You ready? Good morning. Honoured sponsors, distinguished guests, fellow delegates, Salam alaikum. I'm going to talk for the next 10 minutes about avoiding pitfalls in public-private partnerships. A little bit about myself, Paul MacDonald, from Scotland originally. I apologise for bringing the rain to Riyadh. I've had a career that spread a few companies, from Procter & Gamble to DHL Supply Chain. I was a former SVP with DHL Supply Chain. Started my career after graduating with engineering from the University of Glasgow with Procter & Gamble. I've worked in multiple sectors: fast-moving consumer goods, health and beauty, dairy foods, industrial ingredients, oleochemicals, contract services, supply chain services, freight, and telecoms, and now really strategy and change consulting. My other passion is the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, CILT or SILT, which is something I spend my time as a trustee and global board member of. 60 seconds on CILT, if I may. Our purpose as a non-profit is to promote, encourage and coordinate the study and advancement in the science and the art of transport, logistics and supply chain in all its forms. It's a very long sentence. The goal is the leading professional organisation for all in the movements of people and goods. Logistics, supply chain and transportation don't work without people, and people can't work without supply chain, logistics and public transportation. Our strategic pillars: professional standards, collaboration around the globe and sustainable growth. DNA: stronger together and working with mutual respect. So, what is a pitfall in public-private partnerships? The picture is Robert Burns, the Scottish national poet, most famous for the song that's sung around the world on the 31st of December every year, Auld Lang Syne, Should Auld Acquaintance. He also wrote a poem called Ode to a Mouse, and I apologise to the translation team for 250-year-old Scottish, but the best laid plans of mice and men gang after lie. In English, the best laid plans of mice and men often go wrong. So why do they go wrong? Most likely, pitfalls are ignored. Pitfall, the definition: a hidden or unsuspected danger or difficulty. And yet, as everybody in this room who's ever worked on a project knows, most of them can be seen in plain view. So what kind of pitfalls do we have an example? So I've picked 3 examples from around the world. First, national-local governance misalignment. The second, a lack of capacity of capability. And third, cost becomes the focus and not values and value. And therefore, you get a pitfall, and I'm sure many people will recognize the project going off a cliff. So, number 1, I've used the example of UK high-speed rail network. The governance appeared to be vertically aligned, but it was not. So what happened? UK Parliament issued an Act of Parliament authorising implementation of HS2 as a national priority. But at a local level, local planning challenges were permitted for environmental damage, inadequate compensation for land purchases, poor communication or engagement of the contractors, or practical construction impacts such as noise and traffic. The result, the opponents of the scheme overload the planning process in every village, town and city on the route. Every single challenge has to be dealt with. That slows down construction. As many of you will know, your build team is ready to build, and it gets paid whether it builds 1 kilometre or 100. So it slows down implementation, burns through cash and the budgets, and in the end, the project will go ahead for only the bottom 1/3, which I think is down mainly to the slowdown through the planning. So moving on to the second pitfall. Parties lack sufficient capacity of capability in their organisations. So there was an esteemed gentleman yesterday in the Ramco talked about putting players on a pitch and making sure you have the subs and the value of people in any project delivery beyond technology. There are many examples around the world. If I would sum it up, a wish may be the mother of invention, but skilled groups of people deliver projects. So what happens? Perhaps a public body wants to implement an important policy by an important date, build, operate and transfer, or an important piece of infrastructure, or a service. Public organisation prepares a business case and an ITT, and the organisations bid for the project. But one thing to make sure you work out and notice as a customer buying, the bid team is not the delivery team. So make sure you meet the delivery team properly. Often, in the case, neither organisation has enough skilled people or a critical mass of skilled people to steer or physically deliver the project outcomes to that timeline. Sometimes the customer will wish to transfer risk, but then they may operationalise, whereas the customer is there to steer if they've delegated the outcomes that they want the project to have. And the result, the project does not deliver basic outcomes to either the public or the private organisation, and it burns through crash and it is cancelled, usually to mutual disappointment all round. So always check for organisational critical mass and that ongoing people succession planning in any major project. If you think about it, in a 10-year project, 10% of people will leave one way or another. So, third pitfall, the cost becomes the purpose. The cost becomes the purpose and not the values that you set out as your organisation or the value that you were seeking to deliver. And again, everybody in the room can think of many examples from all over the world. As I summarised it from my granddad, you know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. So what happens? Public body wants to reduce public financing by improving government efficiency, by utilising private sector expertise. But the project becomes focused on cost reduction, not the service outcome or the value for money, just cost. There's an over-focus of inputs. The cost is an input, it is not an outcome, and the overall outcomes are then forgotten. The result? Budgets are spent, service quality often worsens, and the cost of service can actually go up. And then the project is cancelled to mutual disappointment all round. So cost reduction becoming the project outcome is not a good place to be because it loses sight of the improvements in either service or efficiency or resilience or the customer performance service you were trying to deliver from the project in the first place. So let me just recap on the common pitfalls. So the three there. At the top, the lack of national-local governance alignment. You could also call that a misalignment between strategic and tactical goals. The lack of capacity of capability planning in the organisation, particularly for key people in key roles for a sustained period of time, and a cost focus, not the values and the value. The takeaway, look for the pitfalls and deal with them, and despite the fact I've talked about the projects that don't work, there are also hundreds and hundreds of examples where organisations do acknowledge the pitfalls and they do address them in how they steer and run the projects and keep the eye on the prize. Lastly, if you do want to connect, these are my details and a little bit about CILT. We're welcome to see you. And lastly, thank you. Shukran.